What's up, squad? It's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. Of all the human traits, by far the most corrosive has to be the feeling of entitlement. The concept or the idea that someone owes you something. Not that you should achieve something, but they owe you something. Now, I think in a very broad sense, we can establish that there are fundamental human rights. Won't even say that. There are fundamental human ideals. We can agree on this. But more or less, the vast majority of any accomplishment one would encounter in life that is worth anything is to be achieved. But the feeling of entitlement, it removes all logic from the mind. And with that void from lack of knowledge, it is filled with a feeling of bitterness, anger, a conniving drive to get what you feel someone has shorted you. Because the feeling of entitlement, for all intents and purposes, removes the concept of fairness. If a person is entitled to something and they don't have it, they feel they have been cheated. And therefore, in their mind, anything that they do to get what they have been cheated from is fair game. And this causes suffering, pain, destruction, thievery, lying, etc., etc. It it destroys the humanity in a person, this feeling of entitlement. It destroys relationships. I believe entitlement in its corrosive nature, it destroys a human's soul the way water destroys metal by means of rust. America has escalated the war in Gaza by attacks on Yemen. Now, each escalation, this is as layers, right? So, one can say Hamas escalated by the October 7th attack. Israel escalated things by the invasion of Gaza. The Houthis in Yemen escalated by targeting ships going through the Red Sea, which they believe were headed for Israel or had connections to Israelis. And now America has added another layer to the escalation cake with its latest rounds of bombing in Yemen. I don't know if you remember this, but it's par for course. Around 2015, there was an escalation of tension in Yemen between what some would consider the established government backed by Saudi Arabia and the Houthis, backed by what many believe were they were Shiites, so many believe backed by Iran. Anyway, a proxy war commenced once the Houthis were strong enough to take the capital. And this is another subject that hasn't been delved into enough, is the ineptitude of Saudi forces. Saudis don't like to get their hands dirty. Despite having one of the highest, if not the highest, military spending budgets per capita, year on year after year after year, the Saudis were unable to protect their guys, and the Houthis took over. Now, a lot of the reason for this is one of the reasons is primarily the Saudis, they want to get their hands dirty. They want to shoot missiles and use jets and airplanes. They didn't want to get on the ground and they didn't want to contend, which speaks to me to a frailty of state when I see a nation like that. Obviously, they couldn't go full throttle because they didn't trust the support of their nation in that effort. The Saudi people and leadership did not believe their success will be found in the war in Yemen. And that is yet to be proven, especially what we're seeing coming out of Yemen now from the Houthis. That war may in fact have been justified and probably should have been pursued to a more severe degree than it was. Now that we have a clearer picture of who the Houthis are, and they are who many thought they would be, and that is a globalist, imperialist organization, no different than any other imperialist organization. But these are not a group of people that come to power necessarily for the benefit of the people of the nation, which we would all would want, but these are Islamic zealots, maybe even Arab nationalists. But we most definitely know the Islamic zealot part is true because their slogan is not to provide a better quality of life for the people of Yemen. Their slogan is not to bring economic development to the nation of Yemen. Their slogan is not to be a positive contributing member of the global society by showing the world how to care for its people and to give them a high quality of life. Their slogan is death to America, death to Israel. This is their slogan. This is what binds them. This is their ethos, their modus operandi. This is how they see the world. Their entire view on the world is in the destruction of America and Israel. Not what could be, but a whole existence wrapped around the commitment of removing what shouldn't be. It's a negative in all of its nature. This is unfortunate because years ago, if you remember, with this escalation of war, Yemen was facing one of the greatest humanitarian crises in the world. The Saudi bombings did lead to um, mass migrations, refugees, famines, suffering. The Yemeni people were suffering, and the war continued. And when the Houthis, when President Biden, believe it or not, it was under President Biden himself who said this war must end in Yemen. The war started off with Obama and President Trump continuing on those policies, but it was President Biden, and many would probably point to America de-escalating tensions around the world to make room for Ukrainian support. But it was President Biden who said this war needed to end because of the humanitarian suffering and the expense. And the way he was going to end it, right, and this is the drawstring, is he was going to pull the military support to Saudi Arabia. This is obviously the lever that America has on Saudi Arabia. When they want Saudi Arabia to go left or right, they threaten to pull military support. Once again, speaking to the frailty of the Saudi state, that the highest negotiating bargaining chip America has is around weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. So the Houthis now, in their relative victory, instead of focusing on developing the quality of life of Yemen, who has one of the worst, if not the worst, income per capita or GDP per capita rates in MENA, the Middle East North African region, the Arabian Peninsula by far, but in all of MENA, from Mauritania to Pakistan, the last reports on a PPP basis, purchasing power parity basis, or real dollar term basis, is that Yemen was at the bottom of MENA in GDP per capita terms, somewhere around in between Sudan and Afghanistan, two war-ravaged countries. So Yemen is one of the poor countries on the planet, and their leadership decides to invest in offensive war. Their leadership doesn't say how do we develop our people, get our economy on track, but they're committed to the destruction. They decide to buy weapons and missiles to commandeer ships and shoot missiles at a country nowhere near its border. This is what the Yemenis have decided to do with their fortune. So it really begs in a part of a lot of people don't like America adventurism. But you see what happens when you don't take the baby out in the crib, for lack of better phrasing. Yemen, the Houthis have been able to come to fruition. They were able, if they were to be dealt with at an earlier stage, it wouldn't be causing a havoc on global shipping. Because now Yemen have basically, the Houthis have proved themselves in line with ISIS, an organization. The reason why I say ISIS, I won't say ISIS, Al Qaeda. The reason why I won't say ISIS, because I think ISIS is meant to be regional. ISIS, there are some confusion around ISIS because they pop up in countries they should be popping up. It is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. But what you're seeing now is that you're seeing Houthis have a globalist agenda. And the last group you see such as that is a group in the likes of Al Qaeda, even though the Houthis have not risen to that level. But with the slogan "Death to Israel, Death to America," they may be well on their way, unfortunately. Love to hear your thoughts. Comment below. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Back to up.